Hello and welcome to the daily newspaper analysis. Today we shall be discussing the newspaper of the 3rd of April. So coming to the first article, Federalism and Fairness. Now the context here is with regards to the demand for federalism. Now what you need to understand in this context is that India already is largely in spirit. India is a federal country. The state governments in India have equal powers as the central government with regards to the state subjects. So it is not that India is not a federation as a whole, but the issue is that this demand is for increase in federalism. So that is what you need to understand in the context aspect. Also, this demand for federalism at present is being specific with regards to the cultural federalism. Now, in the past, the demands were with regards to devolution of more powers to the state. So that was the first aspect of federalism. This later migrated to further financial federalism, where states started asking for more financial resources so that they could decide their own policy. Now this is the era of cultural federalism, cultural autonomy. Now the background here is that we all know recently the state of Karnataka has launched its own flag, the state flag of Karnataka. So it is in this particular context, in this background, that this issue of federalism or a relook of federalism within India is something that is becoming important. Now, with regards to this topic itself, you have to understand that in the General Studies paper 2, the topic that is going to be, that the syllabus is largely comprising of polity. Now, this is a very stagnant topic. This is because Constitution is something that is constant and not many questions can be generated each year. So whenever such kind of a topic emerges where a debate is what is done on the core aspects of the Constitution, then that topic automatically becomes very, very important for UPSC, and this is one such topic. Because the core aspect here is federalism. This is something that is enshrined in the Constitution. A debate into re-looking the principles of federalism, their success and their failure is something that makes this topic very important. So that is going to be the relevance. Now coming to the issues which have been discussed in the editorial, the first issue is with regards to the unrest in South India. Now here you need to understand that in the southern states of India, an unrest is what is being seen. For example, this unrest in the state of Karnataka with regards to the state flag. Another issue is in the state of Andhra Pradesh, where a special category status is something that is being demanded. And in this context, the alliance between the state government of Andhra Pradesh, the ruling party in Andhra Pradesh, and the BJP government has also been severed. So this is something that is important. Also, the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh has said, he has made a claim, he has made a statement, that the central government is taxing the southern states and is transferring that money to the northern states. So this north-south divide is something that has been reasserted. Another issue here is with regards to the terms of reference to the 15th Finance Commission. This is something that is important. Now, in the terms of reference to the 15th Finance Commission, the central government has directed the Finance Commission that instead of using the data from the 1971 census, the Commission should use the data of the 2011 census. Now, the issue here is that in the 2011 census, the population in southern states has been stabilized. And as a result of which, if devolution of taxes is going to be done on population, then the South Indian states are complaining that they are going to be adversely penalized for following a good policy of family planning and for controlling the population compared to the North Indian states, which have outrightly failed in controlling population, but they will be benefited. So this is one important controversy which has emerged recently, and as a result of which this issue of federalism and especially South and North states is something that is becoming important. So that is one analysis. Another thing that is important are the three debates which this particular editorial is raising. Now, the first debate here is with regards to a constitutional claim for autonomy, which means that an analysis of the constitution vis-a-vis the autonomy that states deserve is something that is going to be made. Another thing is that this editorial is discussing about a demand for fairer distribution of taxes. And the third debate is with regards to the assertion of linguistic and cultural rights. So these are the three debates which we shall be delving into. So coming to the first issue, which is of the constitutional context. Now, as I have mentioned, that in spirit, very much India's constitution is a federal constitution. States have many rights. Even Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had said that the Indian constitution is largely a constitution which is more oriented towards a federation rather than a union of states. But definitely there are some limitations to this. For example, the first article of the Constitution itself, that is the Article 1, calls India a union of states rather than a federation of states. So that is one aspect which reveals that indeed India is a union of states more than a federation. Another important analysis here is with regards to the Article 3 of the Constitution, and this is again an important article. This article gives the centre all powers on destroying states, or for that matter making new states. So the statement that is given to describe Article 3 is that India is an indestructible union of destructible states. This means that the states in India do not have any integrity and they can at any time be destroyed. So that is something that is going to be important here. Another thing is that a question is what is being raised, that is it time for change to mark a shift from this Article 1 and Article 3 to a newer form of policy, a newer federal form of structure of the Constitution. So this is something that is being raised. Now this can be justified on two grounds. First and foremost is that it is already 70 years of independence. Now this Article 1 and Article 3, which made the centre very much powerful as compared to the states, is something that came in the aftermath of the brutal partition which India faced during 1947. This was a time of communal violence in the country, and there were a lot of centrifugal forces which had emerged in India. So at that point of time, it was the compulsion of the constitution makers that the centre should be made stronger to ensure that the country is integrated, and these kind of centrifugal and communal forces have to be curbed. So at that point of time, the structure that was followed was something that was acceptable. But today this cannot be accepted because it is already 70 years since independence, and nationalism is something that is on a rise, and all the states have a belongingness of oneness with each other. So is it time that India should mark a shift from a union of states to a federation of states? That is one question. Another thing is that there have been demands that there is a need to reconsider the distribution of powers between the union and states, which is also discussing the issue that whether or not it is time for a change. Another thing which has been analyzed here is with regards to Article 356. Now you should know this Article 356 is one of the most abused articles in the Constitution. This is primarily because this article has been misused against the states. This is the article of state emergency. Now here the editorial discusses that this kind of an article, this kind of provision is something that is a vestige of the colonial government. And so it is time to relook into these kind of provisions and do away with these kind of extreme powers which centre has over the state governments. So this is something that has been analysed. A question can come directly like this also, that is it time for India to completely do away with Article 356? So that can be another question. Now, in response to these demands for time, that whether or not it is time for a change, the present government came up with the idea of cooperative federalism. This is a concept which has been mooted by Prime Minister Modi himself. He has said that India is now not a mere federalism, rather it is a cooperative federalism, which means that all the states are cooperating with the centre, and it is not that they are subordinate, but they are coordinate to the centre. So this is something that is important. Another important analysis with regards to the cooperative federalism is the abolishing of the Planning Commission and replacing it with the Niti Aayog. This was also in line with cooperative federalism. Another important step that was taken was with regards to the 14th Finance Commission. Here you should note that the 14th Finance Commission in the 2015 report had increased the central devolution of taxes from 32% to 42% for states. So this was the biggest ever devolution that the states received. So this was again a step in the direction of cooperative federalism. Also, the centre government has now starkly reduced the number of centrally sponsored schemes. So definitely these kind of steps are what are being taken, but the states are demanding for more freedom, and this idea of cooperative federalism is something that is further being questioned now, that it is time to move even beyond this. So that is the entire debate. Another issue here is with regards to the linguistic and the cultural autonomy. Now here what is important is that you need to understand that the states in India were not formed on the basis of administrative convenience. Rather, they have been formed on the basis of linguistics only. So when states are formed based on linguistics and culture, then in that context, this demand for autonomy is something that is going to increase. And also this is somehow related to democracy. Now, when India got independence in the year 1947, at that point of time, people's primary concern was freedom of the country. At that point of time, people were not demanding much of cultural autonomy. At that time, the aspirations of the citizens were different. Now what has happened is that after 70 years of independence and 70 years of sustained democracy within India, people have increased aspirations and now they want to express themselves much more, and as a result of which these demands for linguistic and cultural autonomy is definitely going to increase. This is something that is a normal trajectory with regards to democracy, and so this is something that the center should not deny, and this is something that the states should get. So that is something that has been analyzed here. Another thing which is important are the issues of fault lines. Now this is primarily with regards to the south and north divide. Now what is happening is that the southern states are getting a sense of alienation within India. This is primarily because they are feeling that these states, the South Indian states, contribute economically to the country. But whenever it comes to the political space, at that point of time, it is the northern states which are dominating politically rather than the South Indian states. So that is one issue that is one sentiment which is pertinent in South India and which is important. And also South India is feeling marginalized culturally. This can also be related to the present move by the central government to promote Hindi language. So this is also somehow related to the anti-Hindi sentiment in South Indian states. So what has finally been advocated here, which is the final opinion, that fairness on constitutional, financial and cultural fronts is something that should be given to all the states in India. It is only in that spirit that India can collectively develop. So that is the entire analysis of this editorial. As I have mentioned, the topic is one of the most important topics for 2018 mains. So that is going to be the relevance. Now coming to the next article, Kaveri again. Now, the context here is with regards to the Kaveri dispute. In the past, we have discussed many articles on Kaveri dispute, so I will not go into a repetition of those aspects. But the issue is that even during those discussions, we had mentioned that the Supreme Court had accepted the tribunal judgment on Kaveri dispute, and it had given a timeline of 6 weeks where the center was supposed to form a Kaveri management board. So the issue is that this board is something that has not been formed till now, and as a result of which Tamil Nadu government has now again gone back to the Supreme Court. That is the entire controversy here. Now coming to the issues, the first issue is with regards to the Kaveri Management Board and the Kaveri Water Regulation Committee. Now, as obvious, the center has not formed these two bodies. This is a prime and a core demand of Tamil Nadu, whereas Karnataka was against the formation of these bodies. Now you should know that Karnataka is poll bound, and what is being analyzed is that it is due to political and electoral consideration that the central government has not formed these bodies, and so this is amounting to a contempt of court. Now this is one pertinent example whenever a question is asked on simultaneous elections. Now there also I had discussed that often it is seen that major decisions like these, for example, this is a major decision which is going to impact water sharing between these two states. Also, this impacts the daily water requirements of the citizens in these states. But if these kind of important matters are going to be linked to the political calendar of a particular party, then this is something that is a grave sadness that is emerging. So this is something that is unacceptable, and in that context, you can give this example that as happened in the Kaveri dispute also, that the board was not formed primarily due to political and electoral consideration. So this is one important example there. Another analysis which is important here is with regards to the letter and the spirit of the law. Now the spirit of the law is the idea behind the law which the Supreme Court had mooted. The idea was of dispute resolution mechanism between Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. But what the center has done is that devoid of the spirit of the law, it has fallen unnecessarily into the letter of the law, and it is saying that the Supreme Court had not categorically mentioned that a management board is what should be set up. Rather, it had only spoken about a dispute resolution mechanism, which could be an alternative mechanism also. So the focus here is on the letter of the law and not on the spirit of the law. So that is one important analysis. Another very important issue is the issue of statesmanship. Now, what we are seeing is that the political leadership in India is not showing statesmanship. They are much more concerned about short-term political goals rather than development of the country as a whole. Now, it was after many years that finality is what had come to this particular dispute, and the state and for that matter, the central government should have welcomed this kind of a finality to this issue. But instead of this, it has not brought about that finality, and again the matter has gone to Supreme Court. So indeed this is a matter of grave concern and sadness. So that is something that is important. This is merely an update on the Kaveri dispute, which is an important one. So that is the relevance. Coming to the next article, sharing data across borders. Now the context here is with regards to the Cloud Act, which has been passed in USA. Now the full form of this Cloud Act is the Clarifying Lawful Overseas Use of Data Act. This is an act which has 2 weeks ago been signed by the President of US, President Trump. Now this is an act which will enable the like-minded states for cross-border data sharing. This will allow law enforcement agencies from other states to directly obtain, from other countries for that matter, to directly obtain electronic data which is held by communication service providers in US. So that is something that is important from the background aspect of this particular act. Now coming to the issues which are important, the first issue is with regards to the global cyber norms conversation. This is a key word which should be used in your answers. Now by this global cyber norms conversation simply means that globally there is a demand that there should be conversation within countries to achieve some universally acceptable norms on cyber crimes. So in that context, this is a major development that now countries will get associated with the US and they will be able to get data from US for the crimes which they want to investigate. So this is indeed an important development in this regard. Another thing is that India will definitely be seeking an agreement with the US for obtaining data. So that is something that is important. Already India is having a good relation with the US, and this agreement, if signed, will be of huge benefit to India, because at present there are a number of issues in obtaining data from US, and the primary issue is of delay. A case has been mentioned that sometimes the delay goes up to 3 years. So in that context, definitely this is a good step. This is a step in the right direction. Another issue is with regards to the inaccessibility of data. Now what you need to understand here is that at present, often it is very difficult for various countries to get data from US. This is primarily because of, first and foremost, the storage of data is an issue. Now the data that is being generated within India is not stored within India. The storage of this data is done on the cloud. And this cloud storage of data is somehow not not locally located, and as a result of which it becomes difficult to get access to this particular data. Another thing is that the US laws prohibit the sharing of this data, and as a result of which it was very much difficult, and getting this data was something that was inaccessible. So in this context, this particular law is somehow important. Another thing which you need to know about is the crimes for which such kind of data will be required. The first set of crimes for which this data is required are traditional crimes. Often we are seeing that even in traditional crimes, electronic data is becoming very important. First and foremost, to know about the conversations which the person has had, or for that matter, the victim or the suspect has had. So in that context also, this data is somehow important. For cyber crimes, obviously this data is very important. And also this is somehow very important for cross-border crimes. For example, crimes like online radicalization of people. In that context, this is something that is going to be very important. So these are the types of crime in which this data can be important. Another thing that you need to know is about some limitations which this data, the sharing of this particular law has. Now, as per this law, US requires these foreign states to share the same culture of privacy and other civil liberties which already US has. And another thing is that for a country to get this access of data from US, the country's claim to this particular data should be approved by the Attorney General in US. So this is something that is raising some questions. First and foremost, you might be asked a question whenever you have a debate on globalization. A question might be asked that globalization infringes upon the autonomy of countries, and this is going to be a stark example here. Now, if a country does not wish to have its laws more aligned to the US, then a country will not be allowed to get an access to this data. So this is somehow a top-down approach where US is going to dictate the laws within each country. The privacy and the civil liberty laws within different countries is something that is going to be dictated by US. So that is one negative aspect about it. But one positive aspect here is that because of this particular law, India will have to have a data protection law of its own. In the past, we have been discussing that India's data protection law is somehow that is lacking. The IT Act that India has, the IT Act of 2000 is somehow inadequate to deal and protect data. So a data protection law is something that India will now require primarily to claim data under the Cloud Act. So that is one positive aspect about this particular act in total. So that is going to be important here. This topic is somehow important because of the Cambridge Analytica case. Also, the data sharing and all is somehow very much new. So that is the relevance. Now with this, we finish today's discussion. I thank you all for watching and I hope to see you tomorrow.